Having initiatives on things like abortion or marijuana policy or our electoral system might not seem new. In a number of states, it could have a drastic impact on policy after this election. Here are the top ones we're looking at. Abortion is on the ballot in 10 states, and there are a few that we want to highlight. One in Arizona, where opponents of a measure that would enact abortion rights are adopting the slogan that the ballot measure there goes too far, an acknowledgement that abortion rights are broadly popular, but trying to make a specific argument that this bill would be too permissive. Florida has a higher threshold to adopt state constitutional amendments directly on the ballot. The measure needs to earn 60% support, not just a majority of the vote, in order to be adopted. So that will be a greater threshold than abortion rights forces have faced in many of the other ballot measure fights that they've had over the past couple of years. I also want to highlight Nebraska, where there's a unique situation. There are two ballot measures on abortion, one establishing abortion rights and the other restricting the practice. Now those are directly in conflict, but here's how it works. If they both pass, the one that gets more votes is the one that's adopted. Next, there's recreational marijuana, which has been a staple of ballot measures for a couple of decades now. Two states I want to highlight here. One, Florida, where that 60% threshold is still in effect. This measure has split the two most important Florida Republicans, one former President Donald Trump and the other Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Trump has said he supports the measure legalizing recreational marijuana in Florida, while DeSantis is actively working to defeat it. It's also on the ballot in both Dakotas, and it's a continuation of a saga in South Dakota. When it appeared on the ballot in 2020, it passed, but a court struck it down the next year. Organizers tried again 2 years ago, but that time it failed. Will the third time be the charm? Next, electoral reform. A number of states have bills that could establish ranked choice voting in those states, including in Nevada, where it has to pass twice and has already passed once 2 years ago. It's also on the ballot in the District of Columbia, where could establish both open primaries where independents could choose either party's primary ballot, and also establish ranked choice voting in general elections. Only two states right now have ranked choice voting, Alaska and Maine. And in Alaska, there's actually a measure on the ballot that would repeal ranked choice voting. A lot of Republicans fear that ranked choice voting boosts Democratic candidates when no candidate earns a majority of the vote, partially because Republican voters have been less likely so far to actually participate in the exercise of ranking candidates beyond their first choice. And even in some red states where ranked choice voting doesn't exist and isn't even on the horizon, like in Missouri, which has never had ranked choice voting, but where voters will decide whether to prohibit it from ever being established on their ballots this year. No discussion about ballot measures would be complete without talking about California, which is sort of the hub of direct democracy in this country. Typically a large number of initiatives on the ballot there. A couple we want to highlight specifically. One that would establish an $18 minimum wage by 2026. There's an amendment for cities to allow rent control, and another, Prop 36, tough on crime initiative, which would increase penalties for some offenses and is largely viewed as a backlash to some of the liberalization of criminal laws over the past decade. California is obviously a safely blue state, but I'm watching some of these ballot measures more so than the Trump-Harris matchup to find out just how far that liberalism goes and whether there's any kind of acknowledgement of a rollback of some of these policies.